And as we go through, use the chat. My assistant May will be looking at that, and I'll be watching the chat at the same time. And if we just miss everything, then unmute and chime in. So we'll get going and get started. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate you being here. This is we're going to talk about 3 different sales pipelines in 30 minutes. So this is our Prometheus Performance Systems LinkedIn event. And we'll run through this fairly rapidly, and we'll have a chance for some questions at the end, and a time to chat outside of the event as well. So we'll get going. And a little bit about us. We're a business consulting and Smartsheet solutions firm founded in 2003. Done just a boatload of projects with businesses of all sizes, everything from, a 5-person construction firm, home builder, to Whole Foods and Intel and large companies like Applied Materials. I've been featured in a bunch of different publications. So you may have seen me in Inc. or CIO, and do a lot of stuff in the Forbes Business Development Council. So just taking my experience from working with a lot of different clients over 25+ years, which includes about 13 years in corporate America as a general manager, and kind of share with you some thoughts, and we'll see where it goes. So, what I often see are some common frustrations with folks and their sales pipeline and their sales processes. And you can kind of see that list in the bottom there. And I'm just curious, how often do you on the phone in the event, do you experience any of these? And if you do, go ahead and type it into the chat. Maybe if what are maybe the top 2 or 3 that you run into, or if you've got a perfect pipeline, put that in there as well, because I'll grab you after the call and go into that. But typically we see things like not having good visibility, having some unpredictable performance from the sales team. Just getting surprises at the end of the month or the quarter. Those are especially painful. One that's a personal favorite of mine is disagreement over the facts. So you get to it and somebody says, no, that's not what happened, or no, this one closed, right? And often lots of manual work to get the answer. So I see Angela says number 2, Will has 1, 2, and 5. So I think, and so far nobody is saying that they've got a perfect pipeline. So I think we can keep going. And then Craig, number 6, non-sales activity. More time trying to find answers than making sales. So I think it's not uncommon, and I've seen this with everything from small businesses, the small 100 million or 100 employee folks, up to the Fortune 50 of some of the same issues. And one of the things, especially for the smaller organizations, when I ask about what's in your pipeline and what are you doing, are you measuring that, or are you guessing? Do you really know what's out there, and are you having the ability to track it, or is it kind of like, hey, I got some great sales guys and gals, and they just know what's going on? And so often there's a mix of the two. And the other thing that I see quite often is, you may have a pipeline, but does it fit your business? And I've faced this, and I've seen clients face this, where they, say, hey, we've got some pretty good software, but it doesn't fit our business. But you know what? We're just going to make ourselves fit into this because it's the best we have. It's a little painful to do it, but what choice do we have? And just curious, in the chat, if you've experienced that yourself, let me know. And if you haven't, don't worry about it. So, one of the things that I really am passionate about is making sure that your business processes and what the tools you use for your business really fit your business. And so that's kind of the topic of today. What we're going to do is look at 3 pipeline models. Some of these may be a really good fit for your organization, and others may not. But really, the message is kind of looking at approaches that other industries have taken, and then maybe taking the best of what they're doing and seeing how it might be helpful for you. And so we're going to talk through the Smarter Operations dashboard and sales pipeline, and that's the one that I use for my business. Sandler, using a Sandler prospecting method and using that to measure your pipeline. And then going through the Shipley sales business development model, which is used more frequently in government areas and very long sales cycles. But we'll talk about each of these in succession and spend a little bit of time exploring them. And hopefully there'll be some things there that will resonate with you. And just curious, has anybody, are you familiar, who's familiar with the Sandler Submarine? Just get a yes in the chat. And if you're familiar with the Shipley method, just put Shipley in the chat. So I see so far some folks are not familiar with that, so that'll be good, and we'll just go from there. Yep, and just to repeat, we will have the event will be available early next week. So one of the things that I think is important, one of the things that I embrace, I call it the Goldilocks principle. And you probably know the story of Goldilocks and the 3 bears. She wanders into their cabin, and it's the classic thing of there's some porridge that's too hot, some porridge that's too cold, and some porridge that's just right. And the bed that's too soft, the bed that's too hard, and the other that's just right. And when I think about what you do with your pipelines and what you do with your sales support systems, what you want for your business is something that's not too big, something that's not too small, and hopefully something that's just right. And so that's whether you're using some technology or whether you're looking at the complexity of what you're going to track. And you just want to have the right amount of control for the size and scope of your business and for your sales operations. And again, to reiterate, if you can, it's best to fit your business. Are you facing there where you're kind of fitting your business to a platform that you chose, or can you fit the platform or your solution in the process? But often you might get locked in. Oh, and go ahead.
I went to look for you, and I was like, hey, wait, did she just watch me?
So I've got you all muted. If you need to unmute, just unmute yourselves. So, as we're looking at a sales pipeline and how we take care of that, it really can help with your sales enablement. And so what I'll show you with each of these techniques and approaches, the things that I think are important are really, what are your key metrics? So as you look at your pipeline, what kind of key metrics can you get out of it so you understand a snapshot of your business, can take a look at the trends, understand your various customers or market segments. If you've got an organization, if you've got more than a couple of sales reps, I think it's helpful to kind of embed some healthy competition into that. So how do you compare one sales rep to the other? And then finally, as you look at things, I like to include some links to key resources so you can take a look at some source data, have ways to view reports, customize, and look at some action items. So with each of these, as we explore them, that's kind of what we want to do to bring them to life. And so to compare kind of the essentials and the pieces of a sales pipeline, really we take a look at, what are the stages? And so the one that you may have seen or that's familiar with you is, kind of starting out with that prospecting phase, wanting to identify somebody who you can do business with, getting to the point where you talk with them and you can assess what their needs are and see where your products or services fit. Getting to a point where you understand that pain and you can create a proposal, something that they can buy. And then getting that yes or no. For my business, I've added a contract phase because I often am selling to very large organizations, and often going through purchasing and getting onboarded as a supplier is incredibly difficult. And so that's one of the things that we've added as a stage, because what we found was sometimes that could take forever. And deals would get lost just because we're lost in the bureaucracy. And then keeping track of like closed, you've won the business, and closed, you've lost the business. And so that's kind of a classic pipeline that we've seen, and I'll show you that in a little more detail. The Sandler Submarine takes a similar approach. It talks about prospecting, but it really talks about pain as the next step, really ironing in on both that emotional pain for the buyer and the more objective pain for the organization. And then it goes into, well, assessing the budget. Is the person that you're selling to, can they really afford what you're going to do? Going through the decision phase, that's understanding who the real decision maker is. What, is it going to be committee? Is it going to be an individual? Who can actually say yes or no? And then for their version, the Sandler version of the win, he calls that fulfillment, which is you're going to deliver the product or the service. And, your job is not done there. So they've added a stage in Sandler that is the post-sell stage, which is making sure that after your buyer has purchased something, that you're really embracing and cementing that relationship in order to gain more business and to keep them happy with the sale. And of course, the stage that we always hate is if anywhere through that pipeline we lose the business, then we've got to mark that as lost in order to keep track of it. And I'm going to make sure and see if we've got anything else on the chat here as we go. Okay. And then the Shipley method has very similar, but it's much more lengthy. They start out with identification and qualification because it's looking at long proposal cycle times. And then pursuit is connecting up with those buyers. Pre-proposal is doing your homework. Proposal development is going through the RFQs and getting everything that makes sense so that you can pursue that proposal and submit it. And then once it's submitted, there's post-submittal activity, which means in contact with the decision makers, trying to win that bid. Finally, you get the contract approval, and then you've won the business. So that's the equivalent of a win. But anywhere along the stage in the Shipley method, you may choose to say do not pursue, or DNP, meaning, this RFQ, this request for proposal, it's not going to fit our business. Our likelihood of winning is very low, so we don't want to pursue it. Or you may lose it along the way and do that. So those are the three elements and the stages, and we're going to talk about them in a little more detail now. So let's go and look at one live. All right, so here's the Smarter Operations version. And what we've got is we look at the cycle time and look at the count. But to look at the pipeline itself, let's go ahead and click and look right at the pipeline and see how we structure that. And so our structure of this is, the name of the opportunity Typically, that's the client name. Sometimes it might be a business unit. And my chat box keeps jumping out of the screen, so I can't see if you guys are asking me anything. So I apologize for that. The product, what is it that you sell? And often you may have one or two products, you may have several, but the idea here is know exactly what you are potentially selling to that client. Obviously, their customer contact, and then the important part really is this sales stage. Like, where are you in each phase of what it takes to make your sale? And as we saw in the previous slide, each business may have different stages. What's important here is that you define, what is the exit gate for each stage? What does each stage mean? And so defining that for your business means that all your sales reps are going to be on the same sheet of music when you say, well, hey, we're in the assessment phase. When somebody says that, then everybody agrees and you don't have any confusion. What we look at next for the pipeline is, what's that forecasted amount? What is the deal size that we think it's going to be? And then assigning against that deal size a probability of the win. There's kind of two approaches that you can take with that. One is, I've got clients who have said, you know what, we just have a probability that the sales rep assigns based on kind of their expert judgment and say, regardless of the stage, I think I've got a 50% chance of winning this deal. I'm going to put it in 50%. What I preferred in my business and with a lot of clients is that we have a defined percentage associated with each stage of the pipeline, so that once we enter assignment, for example, we're at 25%. Other clients have taken the thing that it's either in or out. Once the salesperson is ready to commit to it, then we put it in at 100%, and that deal is going into our revenue projections. But with that, the idea for the probability, if you're going to use that, is that then you can have a weighted forecast. And it's very simple. It's the product that you're selling, the forecast of the revenue you get when you close the deal, probability of the deal, those two multiplied together gives you that weighted forecast. So how much money do you expect that you'll get? And we'll add other things in there around the expected close date. We'll talk about the actual close, and often keep track of things like next steps and that sort of thing. But having the sales stage when you started the sales process and when you closed it is very helpful to keep track of things and kind of look at your sales pipeline. And I've got a comment from Will talking about we're hybrid because we track stage match percentages in CRM, but only really start viewing it once it's over 50% or greater, which makes a lot of sense. You say, hey, it's real. We're not going to count on that revenue until it's really reached a particular threshold. So if we jump back to the sales dashboard, we've taken that sales pipeline, and then from it, we drive some analytics to understand where our business is at. And so, looking at, for example, everything that's in the different stages, you can see our stages to the right. So how many deals do we have in prospect, assessment, and so on, and kind of what's the size of our pipeline. From that, then also we've got various sales reps who are assigned to each of the deals. So taking a look and seeing, well, which rep has how many deals in progress. Understand if your sales team is loaded or overloaded. Is somebody doing better than another person? And then from the percentage of those wins, taking a look and saying, where are we with one business so far? How many are in the contracts phase? Maybe what is everything in the pipeline? and really customizing that to your business is what becomes really, really helpful. The other thing that you may want to do is really understand your cycle times. So how long did it take you to win a deal, you know, from the start to the finish, and how long did it take to lose one? And then how long were you typically in each of your sales stages? And measuring that can give you some insights into your business, and you can make decisions about it. And then we like to take a look at doing things like reports of, you know, what are my current opportunities, everything that hasn't closed, and just seeing that in a very succinct fashion. And then also looking at the deals that you won and the deals that you lost, trying to understand the cycle times and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the one that we use ourselves and a lot of our clients use. I'm going to jump into the Sandler Submarine next. Any questions on this one before we go to the next? Okay, great. And here we go on the Sandler. So again, on the Sandler, the reason for the submarine is under the Sandler training model. The submarine envision is that you get each of these stages ironclad, and you're able to make sure you don't get surprised. So in other words, the vision of a submarine from one of those submarine movies, you know, there's an explosion in one room, you close the hatch, and the submarine doesn't sink. And so being ironclad as you move through each of the stages, whether it's prospecting, painting, the budget stage, etc., is how you're progressing through this this pipeline. And we take the kind of the same approach where we can look at the number of opportunities, track the stages, see where you are, and do sales cycle time. And then if we wanted to look at the, you know, how we treat the pipeline or set that up, again, kind of similar stuff. So we've got the opportunities, the product, the customer contact name, but in this case, just simply looking in with each of those stages, and again, how we've defined them. And so making that fit your business, and saying, well, here's how we exit pain, here's how we exit budget, decision, etc. And then doing the same type of thing with probabilities and close dates and all the rest. And so these are pretty similar for, you know, between the Smarter Operations and the Sandler Sub, very, very similar in their approach. What's different is really when you come in and take a look at the Shipley Method. This one is really centered around a lot of government contracts and that sort of thing. And so the information here is from Larry Newman's Shipley BD cycle, business development cycle approach. And under the Shipley method, they are very detailed. They've got 96 steps that you take as you go through. Looks like my sharing stopped here. Hold on, I apologize. All right, you guys should be seeing that now. All right. Through here, 96 steps, but what you're doing is handing it off a proposal from one team to another. And so they have very, very deliberate assignments for business development teams. And so they talk about moving from a blue team to a pink team to a green team and so on. But each of these has an exit phase. And so I'll take you to the pipeline and talk about it in a little bit more detail. And the way that we look at that is same type of thing with status, but you've got very much for a government objective, you're looking well ahead and taking a look at an opportunity and centering your work around an expected RFP date. And so typically government contractors are looking at something called WinGov. It's a database of opportunities, and they look out and see an RFP and an upcoming proposal that says, hey, we're going to need support for construction or for IT equipment and that sort of thing. And so they go through a very, very elaborate process of analyzing each proposal. And from that, there is a timeline where they've got to make a handoff. And so they come through, and the amount of work goes in with, typically it's like looking at, well, here is how we're going to do that. The RFP release date is here. We're going to have an internal kickoff meeting several days later. Then we start looking at QC is starting to do some controls on things. We hand it over to the pink team, and the pink team has, of those 96 steps, they have a subset of them. Through an exit criteria, it goes to the next team, the red, the gold, the white. And all this is really backwards planning from the proposal due date, so that all of your activity takes you to where you can get that ironclad proposal in place. And so from the perspective of looking at your pipeline, it really is almost more like a project management opportunity, where you've got to kind of look at, well, when do things start? When are they beginning? And then looking at how everything stacks up. And so if you're dealing with either you're in the government space, or if you're working in very bureaucratic companies that have huge proposals, then this method is good for you. But otherwise, for normal businesses, you're probably not going to spend a year trying to win a deal, and one of the other pipelines would make more sense for you. So that, let me get back in here. That's kind of a quick overview. I apologize, we're a couple of minutes over. But just wanted to say, if you would like to get some help to go forward and explore these further, we would love to help you. I'll just put up some recent recommendations for clients here talking about working with us. But if you're interested, and we've got this in the chat, if you'd like to get a sales pipeline health check or a sales enablement health check, or get some sales operation support, I'd love to talk to you about that. Book something in November. The link is in the chat, and 25% off your first engagement. So I'm going to stick around and answer any questions you might have. Let me stop the share and stop the recording.